Hello, and welcome to the Acastic Record, where we will discuss culture, entertainment, philosophy, and life to offer some perspectives you might not see every day. My name is Jared. I am a creative writer and an alchemy enthusiast who has a lot of stray thoughts that need to go somewhere. And I am joined today by.
My name is Dylan, and while I haven't done too much creative writing myself, beyond the odd Dungeons and Dragons game, I've read, watched, and listened to a lot of stories, and I have a lot of thoughts on why those are important.
Fantastic. So today we're going to be talking about this alleged cultural retreat of men from fiction, specifically in literature, written literature. As I'm sure most people around the internet have seen, there's all kinds of studies and all kinds of things that are coming out that are showing that there's a general literacy decline across America specifically. Some are suggesting worldwide, which is never good. But one major demographic that is relevant to us being young adult men, or just adult men at this point. Gosh, time flies.
I don't think we get to say young adult men
I
anymore,
know.
man.
Yeah, once you get the back pain, you're done.
Yeah.
That men are just not engaging with literature in any way for fun. They're not. It's not being discussed, and there's a lot of accusations flying around about who, what, when, why, and where is actually causing this. And we'd like to throw our hats in the ring and kind of dissect a few of our culprits of what we think could be causing it, and also not just be problem identifiers, but be problem solvers and offer some solutions. So, to start, there's, like I said, there's a lot of these stats that are going around of literacy being on the decline. We're seeing that uh, at least from around 2022, 2023. It's about half as many men that engage with literature at all as there are women. And I know that we've seen a huge resurgence, at least for young adult women's literature, with almost every major publisher targeting the romantasy genre. We'll have thoughts about that, that's for sure. Um, but yeah, Dylan, why don't you start us off into what do you think is actually causing men to flee from literature in droves like this? Because it does seem a little odd, even with all the possible ideas. I'm like, it seems strange. Maybe I'm the weird one, but it seems weird.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see the like you know, exact like percentages. And I, found did a little bit of research before we uh sat down for this deal, um, of just like how many the percentage of the population that has just been walking back from not just simply primarily reading. I'd say reading for pleasure, if as a hobby or a side activity with for downtime, as just sitting and reading something for your own benefit, not even necessarily, nothing that has a purpose to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that you have to read for a class. It's not a uh, something that you have to read through because it's a project for your place of employment. But it's like, hey, I'm, you know, want to read this book series that's recommended for me, um, or I've been interested in exploring a different genre. Um, but I think, from speaking from my own experience, I think there is a reality of reading is very much, while it is, there's a lot that can be gained from it long term. Uh, it is a long term gratification activity. And we are in a day and age of short term gratification is the norm. The faster the bigger dopamine hit, the better uh, your and bigger your audience will be for whatever that is. Um,
Mhm.
just doom, people will doom scroll TikTok, doom scroll uh, YouTube um, when they just sit down anywhere for more than 5 seconds. Like, and that might sound hyperbolic, but really take a moment whenever you're sitting and waiting at the doctor's office or sitting and waiting, uh, you know, anywhere, sitting on the couch with your significant other, and uh, you hit a moment in a TV show that's like not really all that interesting to you, and next thing you know, you've missed the last several minutes because you've been scrolling Instagram,
Hmm.
and you've completely disconnected yourself from what's happening around you. Whereas, I think you and I both can confirm when back in our day, uh, it was the time of, you had magazines or small books, be they humorous or helpful, were on the backs of everybody's toilets.
Mhm.
And so when you were going to the restroom and you had a few minutes to kill while you're sitting on the toilet, you would pull open a Sports Illustrated, Farmer's Almanac, uh, Life magazine, and just read something that maybe is outside of the norm of uh, what you find yourself most commonly exposed to. Because, it might not be your house that you're visiting and it's not your bathroom. And what do they read over here?
Mhm.
Uh, so I think technology has definitely had a significant impact on that because you could sit down for 30 minutes and uh, you know read uh, a new fantasy book or something about a period of history you're curious about, and just make that like a little hobby fun project for yourself for the next couple of weeks to get through that. Or you could spend that 30 minutes chuckling at some random person on the other side of the country putting minute long videos of themselves online.
Hmm.
Uh, and unfortunately, brain chemicals say that that is more valuable. So let's keep doing that thing. Um,
Yeah.
so
I.
that's the chief blame that I put because I've noticed that in myself, and I have to actively like fight how my brain has been slowly rewired by the very fast march of technology in the last like 15 years. Uh, and like intentionally like my phone needs to stay on the nightstand and I need to pick up the book or pick up the Kindle, which is like, still technically technology, but it's still a book. It's not the blue light that you get from your phone. It's not as mentally stimulating. It's closer. It's easier access to the book. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
No, that's. I mean, kind of. What most people can point to is the dopamine economy that we all love existing in nowadays. Flying cars. That's what they told us. And we as we see, everybody living in this dopamine economy, uh, there's just so many options and so many things that have been made infinitely easier to access. Uh, because with a book, it usually costs money. There's actually quite a lot of free literature that you can download from archives and sites. You know that I'm the crazy alchemist that I am. I've been reading Carl Jung's collected works, and you can just download those off of Internet Archives and whatnot because those are very old, and so
yeah,
they're public domain. But yeah,
100 years at
at
this
least
point.
about 100 years. Yeah. So
Yeah, because he was
you,
late 1800s, right?
it was. I think it was. I'll have to double check because I
Yeah.
actually don't have that number before in front of
Yeah.
me.
As you and I talk about how his beef with Helena Blavatsky, and I was
Yeah.
like, she was like mid 1800s, and he did
Yeah.
not like. what
So
she
yeah,
had to say about a lot of things.
he was
And
born
so,
in the
but he was
late
after.
18. He was born in the late 1800s, and then he passed in 1961. So
Yeah.
he was throughout the, but he did a lot of his writing, throughout his, in the 20s, 30s, 50s, whatnot. And but yeah, so um, but you still, it's a very everything about reading is active. You have to actively seek out what you want to read, which is always already the first hurdle. You have to then open the pages. You have to look at this daunting 3, 4, 500 page book, and then you have to read all the words on there and take them in, process what they say. If there's a word in there you don't know, you have to look it up. Like, what is this madness? And then if there's a concept or an idea or something going on in the book that you just that's harder to wrap your head around, you might have to reread it. You might have to do it again, and that might make you feel inadequate or dumb or like or there might be just parts that you don't vibe with, and that's something that's not tailored to you. But if you know, all those words were very
Yeah.
intentional, that is exactly what the dopamine economy is kind of wired people
Yeah.
for. Is you don't have to decide what content you're going to watch. I mean, at the very least,
Hmm.
YouTube, while yes, it's still a social media site that you can doom scroll. You do have to
Hmm.
have some degree of actively picking the video that you're going to watch or listen to next.
Yep.
And so while you still can, go down a rabbit hole of brain rot, you can also choose to, watch videos about, philosophy or history or something educational that will enrich you, or finances, and watch, Caleb Hammer yell at people. Those are things you can actively choose. But with a lot of content, your Instagrams and TikTok and whatnot, it's short form, specifically tailored. Uh, Everything will appeal to you most
Hmm.
likely. Everything has been
Yeah.
algorithmically decided that it will probably be something that you're going to engage with.
Oh yeah,
Um,
because it's gonna look at who you know. It's gonna look at the things that you spend the like the crazy like. I
oh,
got
it's
actually I
disgusting.
talked to my father-in-law about this too because there was one point where uh I got together with a group of friends and the next day someone got an ad that someone else in the group had seen on their phone that they had never seen before. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like it's the tinfoil hat thing of like your phone's always listening to you. And my
Oh yeah.
father-in-law's like, oh no, it's worse.
Mm-hmm.
It's the geographic tracking of like you all were in the same room together or around the same area together for an extended period of time. So that person might be interested in that same thing that you've been seeing ads for.
Mm-hmm.
And things like Instagram and TikTok and all these other sites, they're tracking like every second that you are lingering on certain types of content. It's looking at what your friends are looking at and keeping track of that so that it can curate the media that you see to keep you on that platform for as long as possible. Uh, which is like sad and scary because it's like, Bo Burnham has said something similar to this in like an interview years ago now, where he's they're trying to colonize your time at this point. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're you know exploring different like, and it's this concept of like what's the next frontier because we've filled out the map.
Mm-hmm.
There's not much for the average person at the depths of the ocean, and we're very far away from being able to go beyond our planet and colonize other worlds. So where else are they going to go? It's like, well, the average person's time and brain space is still up for grabs. They
Mm-hmm.
just don't know it yet.
Yep. Time,
And so that's
attention,
their ultimate goal.
dopamine, economies. Those are the real
Yeah.
things we are realizing, and most companies realize that, yeah, people don't have infinite money, especially when
Mm.
you have economies that are all over the place. people don't have infinite money to spend on infinite entertainment, and that's why that you'll see these crazy startup stories where we've all heard the term enshittification, that specifically exists because one of the big Silicon Valley uh, schemes, I guess, or one of their big modus operandi is to have a app that has almost no friction early on. It has no friction. You make an account and it's immediately giving you funny memes and dank stuff to send to your friends. And as the platform grows and grows and grows, it gets users and a lot of investors. They don't even care about revenue projections early on. They're like, how many? What's the user base growing like? Because it's essentially to build up all as many users over a couple years and then monetize, all the way down until that platform becomes, oh, it's got too many paywalls and this and that. Everyone moves to the next one, rinse and repeat ad nauseum.
Yeah.
And so,
Which begs the question of like what we haven't seen like, and probably it's because the company is just so dang big that it's like not really going to collapse under itself. But like you've been on Facebook recently, like actual Facebook, not the Facebook Messenger
no,
app.
actually,
Oh,
I'm
that
weird.
good, good for you. Occasionally I just like I peek my head and like, is it as bad as like the last time I checked a few months ago? And it's like,
Oh, it's worse.
yeah, it is. Like you just there was a and part of it's like I don't think people, especially from our generation, are like using it. Ironically, I think the Gen X and older are the one like if there any of them have
Mm-hmm.
accounts on Facebook, they're the ones that you probably might use it more
Mm-hmm.
uh than anyone below that. Uh but you go on there and like I go on there and like I might see a post from somebody that I've known uh since getting a Facebook way back. But so much of it is just, oh, it's a page suggestion. It's an ad for something. It's other complete BS that I'm not even remotely interested in. And it's like it was presented as this whole like, hey, you can get connected to anyone that you know or might want to know through this application. Um, and people can be more connected than they've ever been. And then, obviously it turned into, and yet we're all so distant and,
Mm-hmm.
closed off from each other because no one's going on social media because they want to hear a different point of view. Um, they're there to get affirmation from the echo chamber.
Mm-hmm.
But it's crazy that it's like, yeah, it absolutely kind of was that model that it's like it started off like everybody really liked going on it. There was the games. I still
Oh
remember Happy
gosh,
Aquarium,
Farmville.
uh, Farmville. Yep. Oh my gosh, those were the days.
That was too busy playing Maple
And
Story when Farmville was big. So,
fair enough. Man, yeah, I honestly, I don't think I heard about Maple Story until I met Ryan.
that's amazing.
And that was the first time I heard about it, and I'm just like, oh, that's interesting. Uh,
That's creative. How incredibly unique. I hope you don't
yes,
introduce me
I
to
thought
somebody who's
I'm.
even more invested in it. You're not going to do that, right? Right?
What if he was huge? Anyway, uh, but yeah, it's like, yeah, why would you get into two incredibly grindy and frustrating game mechanics from the same part of the world?
Yeah,
Uh,
don't worry about it.
but
It's the inner machinations of my mind are an enigma.
but yeah, just it starts off as like, oh hey, let's get as many users as possible, get everybody connected, and then let's just inundate them with all of these ads and uh content, just constant content, and keep them engaged for as long as possible, uh, and not worry about what consequences that might have on their lives. Which is the other huge issue is just what it's done to the psyche of people.
It really
Like
has.
even before COVID forced everybody online for a couple of years minimum. So
Yeah, no, that is kind of the thing. All this about social media, what it does tie back into is that people are given the ultimate in the ultimate in luxury of everything that you want to see, very key word there, that you want to see, everything you want to hear, everything that is anything that that is relevant to you, that pertains to your life, your situation, whatever, in a constant feed, infinite scroll things like Instagram, TikTok, whatever. Um, and that just gets people to that point where it's like, yeah, I don't need to be proactive. And I think that the proactive gland or whatever, the proactive muscle of the brain, it atrophies is, I guess, a good way to put it, if we're you being analogous here. The resilience to running into things that you don't agree with, that you don't like, that you mentioned the echo
Mhm.
chamber. Everybody can lock themselves in an echo chamber with apps. I think that for me it is a little weird because I have social medias. I have TikTok and Instagram, but I mostly use them to see the memes other people have sent me, and every now and again fire back some dank memes to the group chat. But beyond
Mhm.
that, I don't use Facebook for anything other than talking and whatnot. But still, the idea there on and even then, it's one of those things where I'm just like, am I still using too much? Am I one of those people that's like, the propaganda doesn't work on me, but that's exactly how the propaganda works on you, is you
Yes,
think it
exactly.
hasn't worked on you. And
Yeah.
so, but still, people can put themselves in this echo chamber inadvertently. You have to be proactive, and these companies, they get the most time, engagement, money, whatever, when they specifically when they keep you around, when they keep you on. So they have no incentives in place to offer you dissenting opinions, to make you think, to engage. The more time you spend engaging your brain, as we all know, that in being active and thinking even can be exhausting. If you really have to, we've all taken tests before, anything that makes you really think, and you're just like, oh man, I'm tired. And when you get
Hmm.
tired, you jump off the app and you go do something else, and they don't want that. No, don't think. Just look at this. Look at this. It's a kitty. It's a very cute kitty. Please keep looking at the kitty. Repeat ad
Pay
nauseum
no
forever.
attention to the kitty is AI.
Yeah, please do not notice the 6 and 7 toes that it has on its back paws. Oh, 6, 7, whatnot, and then you can go off down
You couldn't
that.
help it.
I could not
You
help it. I
couldn't
heard it.
help it.
Yeah, see, I can brain rot myself in my own ways. But yeah, so when the parts of the mind kind of atrophy to being proactive. One of the big things that about books is that not only are they the most proactive form of not proactive. There's far more proactive things like playing a sport. That is a very proactive form of entertainment. To go out and shoot
Hmm.
hoops or something. But as far as leisure entertainment, reading is probably one of the most proactive ones. Reading and writing are kind of, like, I guess, in the same boat of that, of being proactive, because you have to think, you have to act, you have to uh, engage in a more meaningful way. And
Hmm.
I do think that is a big part, and I do want to kind of talk to one of the pain points for, I'm sure, both of us, and that is the role of games and the role of other forms of media, specifically, I guess, in our case, anime,
Yeah.
that
Oh,
also do play a role.
real quick. I
Hmm.
believe the word we were looking for is intentionality.
Intentionality, yeah, proactivity, intentionality, and the desire to the drive to do, to actually make something happen, to make progress on something
Hmm.
that you have to put in effort for. That is,
Active, active participant in
yes.
your own mental well-being.
Hmm. Yeah, that actually is a good word. I like that, intentionality. But yeah, so the replacement, especially for because we're talking about men, games and anime do have a major role here. And don't want to gloss over them. Absolutely love gaming, love anime, but
Hmm.
there's also still there's still a part that is played there in why would I pick up a book and read a story when I can just go and play WoW, when I can just go play Elden Ring, when I can just go do this and that, and why
Hmm.
would I pick up a book when there is an infinitely more fun way to engage with a usually a compelling or thought provoking story. That is one thing that we can uh, that you can give games and anime and whatnot is that they are at least plot based usually, and you will have you'll have something you have to follow, some themes that you might have to grapple with, but still it is something that you are passively taking in.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be as actively engaged with. Everybody, we've talked about second screening. That's a word that has unfortunately entered the lexicon of culture, of where you are doing the task you're actually doing, playing a game, whatnot, but you're second screening a show or an anime or whatnot.
Right.
And I'm like, oh no,
Hmm.
that's no bueno. I guess I mean I'm
Yep. I
second.
had I had a roommate, one of my roommates in my fourth year of college. Uh, that got dude had like a tower set up that has like I think he used three screens. And he would have like he'd be doing like he'd have like a school thing going on one screen. He'd have an like queued up actions for a game on the other, and then the third screen he had like CS like a CSI derivative show going on that one.
It's that
And I'm
level.
like, it's neat that you have like that your computer setup can handle this much like activity right now and not explode or you know
But watching you makes
require
my tummy
require
hurt.
yeah. Yeah, your our electric bill is going to be crazy, and
And watching you gives me a tummy ache.
yeah, and you are the most stimulated man I have encountered in my time here so far.
Yeah, that's crazy work, but also it tracks. It does make sense that
Yeah.
that people are want to do so many things, and so because we feel our attention is monopolized in this in this new attention time based economy, people will try to stack multiple things and then get nothing out of anything that they're engaging with. And I guess that is one of the biggest strengths of literature, of physical book, or even just a book on your phone. I'd rather people read books on their phone or their Kindle or whatnot than not at all.
Yep.
But that is one of the strengths of it, is that you cannot second screen reading. The closest you can do is audiobook. I am currently second screening some audiobooks during my nights. That's about as bad as I've gotten. I don't think I could second screen an anime because I like to see what happens. Anime is very visual, and to that point of being
And you do
visual,
kind of said depending on the quality of the dub work on an anime, you know,
yeah,
it's either in English or you need to be able to read subtitles.
yeah, I was gonna say that's also a thing. Is I'm not like one of the crazy purists who's like, oh my goodness, I have to, I can only watch the sub or nothing at all. But I do try, because I am trying to learn Japanese. I watch in with English subtitles, but I watch it in Japanese because I want to understand the language and the original the original wording of how it was said. But that still does require a degree of intentionality. Um,
Yes.
but yeah, so all of that is still circling the same drain of intention, and it does make a lot of sense because people are tired in this world. There's no getting around that. People are tired between jobs, between what a lot of what we eat. People do not have the greatest diets.
Yep.
and just time feels like a premium. And when time feels like a premium to people, it is a very hard sell to say, hey, you know how you could feel really, entertained at least temporarily, by picking up your phone and watching a couple reels and watching a couple TikToks. You'll be really entertained for that. Or you could, like you had suggested, you could read for you could pick up a book and read for 15 to 30 minutes a day for a couple of weeks to finally get the full value of this one singular story that there are thousands and thousands of out there. And I think that there is a notable phenomenon with how human psychology and how human thought processes work, with analysis paralysis, where when we see there's a lot of options in something, we feel every any option we choose has diminishing returns in how
Hmm.
what we pick. Where if it's like, hey, you could watch this anime, which anime? One of however many thousand are on Crunchyroll or whatever. You could watch, or you could play this game. Which game? One of however many thousand are on whatever console or PC you have. You
Hmm.
could go and you could go do this. You can go do that, and there are so many choices, and there are so many choices within those choices that you're like, I don't want to do any of it. I just want to sit here and, I don't know, what's the easiest thing? Pick up phone scroll. Or if you do choose, I'm just going to play a game that I know that
Yeah.
I like, and that's it, and you're
Yep.
done. Um,
Overwhelmed by all the options and afraid that the return on the investment is going to be a net negative.
and yeah, that there's that feeling, if you've ever been to a restaurant and you're like, I want to be adventurous, I'm going to try something new, and you get something new, and you're like, I could have had the thing I know I like, and I didn't get it. Gosh dang it.
Yeah, that's probably was my father's experience, taking us to all these different restaurants growing up, and I've just got a cheeseburger every
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Like,
So,
you could try all these other things. I'm like, but I know I'm gonna like the cheeseburger.
yeah, exactly. And there is a psychological premise for that we will default to comfort, if we have any amount of uncertainty. People default to familiarity, and so I think that all of these things do tie in to to this the brain rot epidemic, where the move away from literature. But like we had also said, why it's specific to men, I think that unfortunately, those other two, games and anime, are probably based on there are this one I don't have all the exact metrics, so I'm going to say, based on what I remember seeing somewhere, grain of salt, is that men have a lot lower social media usage on average compared to women, but they usually supplant their easy fix dopamine with watching a show, or playing a game, which does track to the very visual male brain that is like, oh yeah, the words are cool, but what if the words could, like, do flips and cut the world in half and be cute anime girl recreations of historical figures. That would be even better. And so that is
Oh
what
my
men will
gosh, dude,
choose.
get out of my head. I
Okay.
I was in prepping for this recording, I thought to myself, like, I bet the whole like men are visual thing also probably plays a factor in why guys don't always like gravitate towards reading when it's just like, or like if you want a really good story, you can like a good father-son story, you can play God of War and God of War Ragnarok instead of, reading any number of like father-son coming of age books or what have you. It's just like, yeah, guys are probably gonna have might have an easier time internalizing like seeing the bond, the thing dramatized in
Or the
front
new
of
one,
them.
the new
Uh,
robot daughter game. What's the robot daughter game?
Pragmata?
Pragmata. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
another one that it's
Yes.
oh
Yes. Like I look at that one, I'm like, ah, yes, I have a daughter, and that looks super adorable. I'm looking forward to getting absolutely emotionally crushed by the end of this game because you know it's gonna
I
Last of
was,
Us us.
yeah, I was gonna say it's like, oh, you can't have nice, sweet, emotional moments between characters, and then everybody just
Hmm.
kind of lives and has a good time. That's like the number
Yeah.
one rule of anything is if you're ever at the beginning of a story and somebody says, I can't wait for this, for this insert commitment or event that is going to happen after this ordeal, yeah, that person's dead. Uh, as I have, like I said, I've been audio booking, and I have been forcing myself to listen to more romantasy. And I've been listening to Fourth Wing. Spoilers ahead for the first like couple chapters. Somebody had the audacity to say, "I can't wait to get married after this," and I just was like, "Oh, he's done. Bye."
What like it's like like the tropes are like especially well established tropes like you're gonna see them and like it's just like you just have to like deal with them being there, but some of like you see them enough and you're just like again.
Really, dude.
Like if I can see it the moment it happens, and like I don't, and it just gets a little tiring, you know?
Yeah, I do think that is the one of the bigger hurdles, I guess you could say, is if you have a trope, that comes up in a game or whatnot. Okay, yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of tropes, but there are other
Yeah.
things to cover up story or narrative elements that might be lacking, because if the gameplay is amazing, then who cares if they use the tired, oh, they die at the end, trope or whatnot, or they die
It was all
because,
a dream.
yeah, or it was all a dream or whatnot, because the gameplay was super duper fun.
Hmm.
But in a book, when all there is the prose and the words and the narrative, and that's all you got.
Yep.
And if that's not getting you, then you're just gonna be like, cool, did I wasted my time? And I
Yeah.
think that might be the biggest thing, is the fear of wasting your time, because books demand the most time of most forms of entertainment. And I guess if you like paint miniatures, that I guess that's up there, for things that
If
take
you're
time.
if you're gonna be super meticulous and not use the there are like fat I got into painting miniatures for my D&D campaign a
Mm,
while back. I've actually got still got some of the ones that I painted on my shelf here in my office, um but yeah, if like there are methods of painting miniatures that cut down on that time. I never like got into them because it would, you know, there's getting a paint gun, to spray on there and uh all these other things, and I'm like, I don't want to get that heavy into it because like,
mm.
how I don't know how much longer like I'll be
How much
doing the
longer the
DM
brain chemicals
thing
will
and
allow you to be
yeah.
interested.
Yeah, well, and it's like it's the same kind of, investment discernment that goes into any kind of like hobby or activity that you're trying. It's just like, okay, well, how many times have we seen somebody that we know overinvest in something that they got really excited about initially and drop like hundreds of dollars on it, and then you check in with them a few weeks later, and all of a sudden they're kind of, apathetic or super disappointed because it totally backfired on them. And it's like, I don't really want to turn into that.
Hmm.
So I'm going to be, you know, I'm gonna invest just enough to get a feel for like what does this mean for me and how valuable is this to me. And I didn't get beyond like just doing the brushes, but because I'm also like you know very meticulous and need things to be just so, not like OCD or anything like that, but definitely
Yeah.
uh, want it to be the best version of what I can accomplish. It took forever for me to like finish the miniature that I was going to be needing for whatever combat encounter I had planned later on.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess that can go in the category of time-consuming leisure activities, as well. But still, that's reading is, I guess, definitely one of the most accessible because you don't really need to have anything outside of, of a book and a functioning, knowledge of literacy. And even then,
Mhm.
I guess that is becoming a premium nowadays. So, yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah, beyond those, that's I think the real crux is people look at reading and they're like, okay, but what if I spend the audiobook I'm listening to right now is 22 hours? What if I
Hmm.
spend 22 hours listening to or reading this, and what if I what if I don't like it? What if I DNR it, which is just did not read, or DNF, I guess, did not finish, where you're just like, yeah, you put it down and you just don't pick it up again, because of whatever reason, um, and so you'll just what if I just don't like it? And that's, I think, the biggest thing is people are so afraid of quote unquote wasting time reading that they would instead rather waste time, because if we really kind of
Just
boil
in
it
general.
down, yeah, if we boil it down, um, when we're endlessly scrolling or mindlessly consuming something, then we are wasting time that we could have been proactively doing or engaging with something in a much more meaningful or enriching manner. Uh, and so that's one of the that's, I guess, one of the weird things. It's kind of a paradox. It's like, I don't want to waste time, so I'm going to sit here and scroll on my phone. That's that's just wasting time with not even extra steps. You're flipping
Mhm.
through something. You're just scrolling down instead of turning a page. You're getting, but okay, at least one
Yeah.
is working out your mind.
Yeah.
um,
You're training your brain to not be patient.
exactly, and that's one of the things. And so this month specifically, this is just something that I have been doing, and obviously anybody can try it, and or even work up to it. But I've been trying to cut back on dopamine sources for myself specifically,
Mm.
because so one of the big things I did is I have cut out most refined sugar from my diet, because that's, I think, a
Ooh.
huge thing that most people don't think about, is just how much sugar we have, how much a juice in the morning or a soda with a meal adds up in sugar. And so the brain is wired to want that, uh, and then uh,
I'm curious, just on that note, like what other things did you find like were frequently in your diet that you were just like, let's like
it's
cut that
so
out of there.
it was mainly juice, and like juice, soda, and desserts. Those were my three biggest things. Having, oh, I'm just gonna have a quick cookie. I'm gonna have a s'mores or something. I really like making s'mores in the microwave. Don't judge me. And
Oh,
so
judged.
we listen and we don't judge. Yes, we do. We're judging very hard. And so
You
things like that.
don't tell the former Boy Scout that you did not make a s'more at a campfire.
I'm sorry. Where am I going to make a campfire in Nevada? And so, um, yeah. So those were the big three. Like, I guess one of the positives, because I don't drink alcohol, so that wasn't something I had to cut out, because that's like
Mhm.
one of the things that I don't always think about. Then social media is not something that I use actively. I use it to watch other people's memes. So I was like, I guess as long as I'm not scrolling endlessly myself, I should be fine if somebody sends me something else. One big thing that I actually found was a really deceptive trap is AI companions, specifically like ChatGPT, because
Mm.
I am a person who thinks a lot and wants to create a lot of things, but I
Mm.
often have a hard time externalizing it in some way. That's part of the reason this podcast is even existing. Is I need to force myself at gunpoint to get better at existing at externalizing my thoughts. Um, and so one of my easiest things would be, oh, I'll just talk to my chatbot about it. It's what's the harm in that? If I have an idea for a story or I have an idea for this, I'll just talk to my chatbot. I'm not going to let it write my story for me. I'm not going to let it do this, but I'll just talk about the idea. I'll learn more about the concept, this and that. But then it becomes its own trap of the same idea of a dopamine feeding loop system where you're not
Mm.
actually making or getting anything done. Your brain is just feeling the reward chemical and going, well, check that off. We got it done. See, I talked to my robot about this thing or this idea, and therefore I have done it. I don't need
There
to
are at least
engage with it.
5 sci-fi dystopian settings that start that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I
uh,
imagine. And so that's one that I had to cut. I was like, yeah, I'm not allowed to talk to my chatbot about anything. I'm just going to, cut my GPT subscription, and if I need to use it in the
mm,
future or for something or whatnot, then I guess I might. But I need to learn how to write my thoughts down myself. And this, thankfully, like I've said, my books, the things I've written, my novels, I've written on my own because I'm not about to let Google get its hands on it and put it through their AI training and whatnot. That's why I write them on a
mhm.
completely different site. I don't write them on Google Docs because every Google Doc is open for AI training. And so, if you want to
Oh,
write a book,
interesting. I'm
don't.
not aware of that.
Yeah, if you want to write a book, don't
Makes
write
sense
it in a
though.
Google Doc. Write it on a site. There's one I've heard of called like Ellipses. There's one that I've been using called Readsy. There's a bunch of them. There's obviously Scrivener is kind of the big one for most people that are writing novels. But yeah, so you try not to write things on Google Docs and try not to give them to chatbots because they will be able to use your words for training. So don't do that.
Hmm.
And so that was a big, that was kind of a big thing as well. But kind of training the brain to seek, to go, wait, I want dopamine, but I can't have, I can't have sugar. I can't, talk to my bot about whatever thing I'm thinking about. I have to actually do something. There is a very, there's a very, I hesitate to say, alchemical or whatnot, but I guess that's kind of that's my perception on it, on
Also,
how,
what got this started?
on how men have a drive, a desire to. I'm going to put this in tactful terms to externalize things that they want to create and they want to externalize their creation. This has other connotations. But it is also, how we do, how we process is we want to put things out. We want to explore and we want to engage with the world by adding to it. That is how. That
Mhm.
is why a lot of things about like a lot of things about legacy always resonate with men very hard. Like
Yeah.
why Red Dead Redemption is such a RDR2 specifically is a big game for us because seeing Arthur and you guys, if anybody's listening to this and and you don't know how RDR2 ends, you've had 8 years. Your spoiler time is up. But as he's dying of this degenerative illness of tuberculosis, you start to become the player, at least in the first playthrough, who doesn't know what's going to happen, just will become a lot more free with their money, will be suddenly a lot more compelled to look for more people to help. And when you go back around the world as John Marston and you're seeing all the little impacts that Arthur had, where like the Veterans Hall that you can donate to and he can get his name on a plaque, that's like it's his name engraved in a piece of metal. But to men, we're like, that, oh my goodness, look at that. And so what I bring it back around to the, like I said, the alchemical interpretation. That is one of the many potential interpretations of the living forever, as most people understand alchemy to be a, oh, you're going to live for, they're trying to seek immortality, they're going to make a philosopher's stone that lets you live forever. Your philosopher's stone, at least the way, one of the ways that I've interpreted it and still do, is your philosopher's stone is you, your soul, your sense of self, and how you make yourself live forever is by making something, by creating something from yourself. That is how you live forever. You have you have children, you have a lineage, you create something that survives you. That is eternal life. Well, that is immortality, not eternal life. Those are different in my mind. And
Hmm.
so that is, I guess, kind of the way that I, would perceive that. Which, yeah. Well, anything you wanted to say to that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Excuse me. That you mentioned that how much the ending with having seeing John Marston in Red Dead Redemption 2, walking around and like seeing the results uh of Arthur's actions throughout the game. And if you did a high honor playthrough, like you're gonna get a lot of warm fuzzies. But if you were, you know, having Arthur do the most base things that he can do in a situation, then it's going to be disappointing because there's a lot of harm that you probably end up seeing along the way. And that's like by far that's like my favorite like choice for a game developer, to see a writer do that.
Mm-hmm.
To say like we saw these characters go on this narrative arc. They've gone through this process of like they had these issues, they have these obstacles to overcome, and now that we've reached the end of the story, they've come to the end of that journey. And there's been all these people that they interacted with along the way, and you get that epilogue, and you see the legacy of their actions. With Red Dead Redemption 2, it's John going around and seeing the results of Arthur's actions. In
I
moving
guess
back over to anime,
I guess you could
uh,
say it's what they saw beyond their journey's end. Ah!
you knew where I was going, didn't you?
I was like, don't you do it! Don't you say
I can't help it, man. Free Rent is so good.
it!
It is one of the best stories that I can honestly say like I've experienced. And experienced is like an apt I think description for it. Because you have this setting and it is an anime, but it's told in like a um very like Western high fantasy kind of setting. Um with like the classic, four person it starts with a classic like four person Dungeons and Dragons party structure where you have the mage, you have the priest, and then you have your two fighters, one of whom is the hero, which is actually more, I guess, would be kind of a Final Fantasy reference as well, because that's kind of the main character of the first Final Fantasy game is like just the hero, uh, which I guess is its own class. Um, I'm butchering that analysis.
No, no, no.
It's a
It's spot
very,
on.
it's very, very far back there in the archives, so it's a little dusty. I apologize. Um, but it starts with the end of the party of heroes, end of their journey, that they have spent the last 10 years traveling across the continent to defeat this demon king who had been, just oppressive to all the other races on this continent for thousands of years. We don't like. I'm not a manga reader, so I don't know if it's actually been revealed how old the world is at this point, and you know what the span of time is for each of like the time periods and eras that they're talking about here. But you start with, the end of their journey, they're being recognized for it, and then they all go their separate ways. And the rest of the episode is like the main character, Freeren, who's an elf who lives for elves are like, I don't know if they're have eternal life, but they are very, very long lived. And free run's been around for at least 1,000 by this point. Um, and she goes on a journey after splitting up with the party. And just because of how elves perceive time in this setting, because they could just live so long, like 50 years goes by. And she doesn't really process how long that was for the human members of the group, and that things have just changed so much in the time that she's been gone. And she, at the funeral of the party leader, you actually see the, poker face, the stoic poker face of, I can't really say poker face because like it's just her face. Because elves just like live forever. Like they don't need to live or experience emotions like instantaneously in short bursts like other people do. But you actually see her break down crying at Himmel's funeral because she realizes like the last 50, like she didn't realize truly how short a life was because she had never actually been around humans for that long before. And, she's lived for thousands of years at this point, um, mostly unchanged. She travels with this party for 10 years, and it completely changes her worldview because of the influence of mostly Himmel, but also the other two members of the group. Uh, and so she, over the next couple episodes, takes on an apprentice who was raised by one of her other party members. Another party member that they pick up along the way is raised and trained by another one of her former party members. And so she's traveling around with the next generation of people from her group, and they're seeing how their actions 80 years, technically 80 years ago by that point, because another like 25 to 30 years pass before she picks up the first, you know, new party member to travel with. Um, but it's like it's another 80 years, and they're going around and they're seeing the effect that the party of heroes had on the world, and you're seeing what happened in the time that they're gone and how they're being remembered, and just learning more about the party of heroes travels along the way. And it's like, and as a man, I'm like, that's incredible. That it's just like you, Himmel lived so authentically with his sense of integrity, just doing good to people, and he did do it out of a kind of like a selfish motivation of like, he wants to be remembered. He wants to have something that survives him left behind, not just simply helping people and having this fun adventure with his group, but also he wants to be remembered. And it's like, and you left behind the best possible memory because no one has anything bad to say about you because you went around and you were the hero. And there's statues and so many times people ask Freerun like, why would you do that? Like that doesn't really make sense for a mage. It doesn't make sense for elf. And she's like, it's what Himmel the hero would do. And in real life, it, compels people to stop stabbings in
Yeah. Oh, I
in
remember
other
that
parts
one.
of the
Yep.
world. Yeah, it's incredible, really.
Yeah. Stories that move people to remember that just because this world feels like everything is on a short-term dopamine drip feed, how much can I get for myself? um, it's stories that remind people that there was a time before you, and there will be a time after you, as far as we know. Heat death of the universe, raptures and other apocalyptic events notwithstanding, there will be a time after you, and that's actually does kind of tie into this whole idea of stories and literature and reading and whatnot, and time specifically. Is there is a kind of, I would call it a apocalyptic anxiety among younger generations. It kind of started with millennials and apparently is relatively prevalent in Gen Z, Gen Alpha, where they don't see future necessarily. Like there's some understanding, but the time preference of now has become paramount, and
Yeah.
there nobody can, not nobody, but a lot of people don't consider what about next, what happens after that, what happens after that. second third Second, third order effects and beyond are almost non-existent in the, in the mind and the memory and whatnot. It's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, well, maybe this could happen, but who knows? We like that's, I think, part of why, we'd mentioned finances and whatnot. A lot of people have these financial, issues. Is there's it the Yeah, part of it is impulse, part of it's dopamine, and part of it, a lot of people confess and admit, if you look watch financial shows, whatnot, people just go, it doesn't matter, it's not gonna matter, everything's gonna collapse soon anyways. And you're like,
Yeah.
okay,
Very
uh,
fatalist worldview.
yeah, fatalist. That's a, yeah, fatalist worldview where just everything is going downhill. Everything's gonna go up in steam, and could be tomorrow, could be in a year. As long as as long as everything goes up in steam by the time, before, the bankruptcy would fall off, my credit report, then it doesn't matter, right? And so
Yeah.
that's, I think, also does, very tangentially play into this decline in reading as a, for pleasure, this decline in long-term time preferences, for being willing to endure something that is not going to be immediate, that's not going to give you instant gratification, because yeah, I might not even get to finish that book if, whatever apocalyptic event I'm banking on happens. And so, I think that does actually play into it, shockingly, and also I think is a, I suppose, could be a good starting point to meet men at, for, for reading, is think about the future implications, what it does for your mind, what it does for your health, what it does for, your dopamine, overall. To pick up and read a book is genuinely one of the most rebellious things you could do nowadays. And nowadays, everybody in all the 90s,
Disengage from the electronics and
yeah,
get back to
in all the '90s
paper.
movies, being a rebel meant, riding your skateboard, being on your cool new phone, and, whatever, doing crazy stuff and going to parties and whatever. And now the
Oh
most
my,
rebellious things you can do is, talk to somebody and read a book.
yeah. Or vote a certain way. Um,
Real. And
yeah.
so,
Oh, it's so funny that you say that because like I earlier on, I was like, man, nowadays it's like, oh, who are we? Who like you look at I think Real Life Fake Wizard actually had this in his video he posted a couple weeks ago about, what are the heroes that most kids look to if they're not being exposed to like the classics that the parents value. It's like, oh, it's streamers that are pointing them towards like some new product that they're being sponsored by to talk about. The they're not looking to heroes. They're looking to
influencers.
personalities.
Ugh, the
And
word.
and it's just like your way of like person to look up to the person to look up to that's doing the activity that you want to be doing is someone sitting in their, LED lit office gaming space talking about things that they're kind of a little bit informed on, but there's a financial incentive for them to talk about it a certain way. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking back to like, growing up in the 90s, the first the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie, like the first 20 to 30 minutes of it was just like I swear it was just an X Games commercial because it opens with them parachuting down and, obviously everybody's color coded to their ranger colors. Um, but like they parachute down, obviously Tommy lands with a snowboard because he's the coolest. Uh, Rest in peace, Jason David Frank. Um, and then like they go from there to like rollerblading across town to like their next destination. And it's just like, you can bet your ass I was asking for rollerblades
Mhm.
that Christmas. Because I'm like, I want to do what the Power Rangers were doing because they're so cool. They're the heroes.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah, the looking to looking to heroes, looking to fictional or otherwise role models, and the idea of role models, because that's a huge thing for men as well. Is men even outside of humans? There's a lot of science studies where, like in chimps and whatnot, where while a lot of the girls they're followed by their moms, they're shown all these things, and the boys they'll just sit behind their dad and watch what he does. That's most of what
hmm
that's most of it. And so for
yeah,
men are not too different. We Well, it's not always our dads. Some It's definitely good if it can be a father figure to be
yep,
a role model. I know I was blessed to have a great father figure as a role model, but also to watch other men in their community. And yes, we have a very global community now, unfortunately and fortunately. There is pluses and
double-edged
minuses.
sword, man.
Yeah, double-edged swords to everything. But there's a lot of guys out there, and not all of them are positive male role models. There's not a lot of streamers that I would necessarily want to emulate or model my life or my morals or my activities after. Um, and like there's some good ones, no doubt. I like Oswin Gold. I think he's chill, but I also wouldn't want to model my life after him. But
No, sir.
there's young men are kind of getting left out in the dust, and I do think that actually transitions really well into a point that I had here about literature as a feminized space and men looking for male role models are not super inclined to go to a medium that has, at least as far as their perception and what they can see in the modern landscape, um, has been dominated mostly by female authors, female editors, female uh, readers. It's pretty much females all the way down, and they look at that and they go, okay, so if I want to go find meaning, purpose, whatever, yada yada, masculine things, I'm not going to go and look at a space that is dominated. I think it's 80%, 70 or 80% of uh, editors are female now in
Wow.
right, which is certainly an interesting statistic. And so
Yeah. Wow.
men
I didn't. I
are
was not aware of that one.
Oh yeah, it's pretty big. I can find the exact one here in a minute, but I from the last I had heard, it was somewhere between 70 and 80% of editors are female, and so if you're going to read anything, it is going to have been fine tooth combed over with by a woman. Not to say that women cannot produce excellent works, but also there are some themes, some ideas, some things that just resonate better with men. And so if a female editor looks it over and does not see those themes or put them in the same light or
Yeah.
give them the same credence that a man would,
hmm
they're going to go, yeah, maybe this should get revised, maybe this should be a little different. And while they might not be their intention to alienate a male audience, that could absolutely be what happens. And I guess what we're seeing nowadays is that is exactly what happened. Is men are like, cool, books are just not for me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
um,
interesting. I've, to that point, I guess like the part of this, the perspective that I'm lacking is, uh, I've been on very much a old book journey the last year and a half of just looking at my bookshelf and be like, I've collected a lot of stuff over the years, and you know, just didn't like purchase them, put them on the shelf, didn't read them, or I've been hearing about like different authors, different writings, and being like, I would like to like get my hands on that and read it for myself because it's, I talk about. the value of previous generations and the perspectives that they had, and it's like I haven't really gotten into reading stuff from them in a long time. And so I've been aware of like the uptick in female authors and especially the romantasy genre and like uh, the but the more I've been hearing about it lately, as like you and I have been talking about it over the last like couple months, um, and it's been covered more and more by other people. It's like, oh yeah, this is like there is this turn, and you know, people could say what they want, but the last century has shown that it is a trend that uh, there's a thing that happens where I'd say probably either sex um, looks at a space that like is dominated by the opposite sex, and they're not jazzed about the idea of like going there and trying to be uh, treated as an equal, or oh, maybe not that. That's not might not be the best wording for it, but it's this idea of like I'm not going to feel welcomed in this space. If nothing else, then the assumption is made that there's like not really space for me in there, and so I'm not really going to approach it.
Hmm. I, at least from what I have seen, um, I guess past 100 years. That's not something I could speak on because I do not have a past 100 years of history. But there is actually a marked trend of a lot of industries that were male dominated and then they become female dominated, especially in the uh, last probably less than 100 years, but maybe 50ish or so years. So we've seen that happen where uh, but I
I think
don't
that
know
was
if that
more along the
happens.
lines, I think, of what I was speaking to, is that there
Mm,
there were like a lot of roles that like they were predominantly um, that you had male representation in those uh,
psychology, there's
professions.
a big one.
Yeah, psychology. I I feel silly for having like learned about this. It was a today years old moment, like
Oh
within the
no.
last couple of years, where it's just like, yeah, cheerleaders used to just be men,
Mm. Oh yeah, I
and
heard about
then
that
and
only a
then
few
we're
months ago.
and then the world wars happened, and a lot of guys had to go overseas uh, and fight in wars, and things still needed doing.
Hmm.
And so women stepped up, thankfully, like not knocking that they did, because like you kept the country alive. Um, while a significant portion of the population was fighting an authoritarian regime, multiple authoritarian regimes.
Hmm.
Um, and uh, but when the men came back, like that effect happened. I think in a lot of cases where it's like, oh, there doesn't seem to be that much, and there's like plenty of stories. Like there's so many movies that are based on this effect that happened, especially with World War II, when guys are came back and just found a very different country waiting for them, a very different home waiting for them when they got back from the European or Pacific theaters. Um, and they're just like, where do I go now? What's my role?
Where do I
Uh,
belong? Oh man,
yeah.
it's almost like we've asked that question for all of human history.
Uh-huh.
It's actually, I guess slightly reaching back to the point of Red Dead. But that's actually one of the huge thematic things. Once again, why I think that game resonates really well with men is that Red Dead, and also I guess Rockstar games in general, because you can say the same about a lot of Grand Theft Auto games, is that they present in a from a different perspective than the usual male perspective. They present it through the perspective of outlaws and criminals and whatnot. But they still ask the question of what is my place in society? Where do I actually belong here? when I, as a man, I have so much, capacity, for good and for evil and for violence and there is justified violence, obviously, but, I have a capacity to do a lot of things, but I feel like society doesn't want me. And I guess that's why one of the reasons that we find these romanticized views of outlaws in Rockstar games super compelling is that they are uh, they they feel like us. They feel like men, even though we're not living that life. We're not robbing stagecoaches, or we're not doing
Mhm.
multi-million-dollar heists and escaping in a plane. But we're like, where does society want us? Because it feels like society doesn't want me. So at
Yeah.
least these guys are doing something in a society that
Yeah.
doesn't want them. And I guess
They
that's.
haven't there's an authenticity and an agency that the character like that the fictional character has that they're able to take.
Mhm.
Um and it's the engaging in that story is all the more tempting when you can see that like, well, it is possible for someone that is living this wicked life does have some of the virtues that you can connect with, like on the topic of Rockstar, like Grand Theft Auto 5. You
Mhm.
have three main characters, and in the vein of like, what is my role in society? Trevor Phillips does not really have much of a role in any functioning society.
He runs a
Um,
respectable international business.
yeah, sure. It's the craziest like character. I'm sure I might have come across somebody that's like a character that is as crazy as Trevor, if not crazier. Um, I guess maybe Cicero
Sister.
from
Oh,
Skyrim.
bother and befuddle.
Cursed wagon wheel. Uh, but but like he is like loyal to like the ultimate fault and like,
Hmm.
don't break that royalty because the dude might, kill you in a fit
Yeah.
of rage. But like there is that loyalty there and they do like, they do the Grand Theft Auto thing and they make the violence funny. Especially when he's like, you go have one of those Trevor side missions where he goes crazy on a very much a caricature of a stereotype
Hmm.
um, that most people I think find annoying.
Hmm.
Um, but then you have, uh, is it Michael is the
Is DeSanta? Yeah, Michael
one of the
DeSanta is the
yeah,
main.
Michael DeSanta.
I guess I call him the main character, even though there are
Yeah.
three main. He's kind
You
of the
yeah,
central.
yeah. And but he's like, he's the family guy, but he's also, the guy that the most I would say the most like the period it's interesting as we're talking about this I'm thinking about his character arc is like he starts out, you know they are bank robbers, they are very good at what they do, and I would probably say like the time in his life where he felt like he had the most purpose was when they were robbing those banks, is
Hmm.
when he is engaged in what he no what he knows how to do best.
Hmm.
And when he goes, he snitches on his crew to the FBI, goes into witness protection. You fast forward, and he's just, he's living
Horrible.
in a multi-million-dollar mansion, but the dude's a bum.
Hmm.
He's
Just
just, he
completely a
drinks,
husk.
smokes,
Yeah.
he's, wildly out of shape, and in his relationship with his marriage is basically non-existent. His kids are all a mess. And I there's like this kind of thing of like the dude's just kind of coasting till he dies kind of thing,
Hmm.
because until the events of the game occur that kind of shock him out of it and you see him like getting to have some more control and agency over his situation. But I think that's like, a very far pendulum swing of what a lot of guys like can resonate with
Hmm.
is, um where's my role in society right now? um where is my crucible to help me become a more efficient functioning version of myself?
Hmm.
Where is my purpose where's the thing that I can bend my like turn my will on and do something productive and leave something that matters when I'm gone.
Hmm. Yeah, and that gun that runs through both games, through RDR2 and through GTA 5, because if you look at all three characters, I personally really like Franklin as a character because young black guy
Me
just
too.
like me, and he's he a Rockstar was very not prophetic, but I guess insightful about what you see of like ailments of Black America and Black communities, and Franklin being this kind of I want out of this. This is so dumb. What are we doing? Why
Yeah.
is hood loyalty? Why does that matter? That doesn't matter to me. I want
Oh,
to go
yes.
somewhere.
And then having the people that he knows from that area just being like, "What are
And
you
then
doing?
yeah,
What are you
everybody
doing
saying,
living out? You better than us?
yeah,
Like,
why are you hanging out with
you don't
that
care
white
about your friends
man?
anymore?"
Yeah,
Yeah.
see him hanging around with a rich white man, getting on him about it, and the moment that he moves into the house on up in Vinewood Hills, he has people that are calling him saying, I knew you were going to sell out on us and this and that, and trying to pull him back to it, even though he clearly wants more for himself. And um, but that's kind of the thing is you see I guess the biggest through line you can find is that they're all games about largely groups of men, or predominantly men in the case of the Vanderland gang, um, of groups of men that are working together with loyalty towards a goal, and that is something that men were just like, yeah, yeah, working together, and that's something that I think, especially in
Oh,
modernity, that we've lost because
oh
men
my gosh.
don't.
Band of Brothers is my favorite like mini series for that reason. Like my dad and my brother and I watched that, and it's very much that. Speaking of World War II, you know?
Yeah, but that idea, and that's why I think also why this is a topic that is going to get too far off base, but why things like like Warhammer and things like Helldivers, things like the Empire of Star Wars, these these military style systems where men have defined roles, and this is what you are, this is what you do, and you're going to work together with your
Yeah.
brothers in arms to achieve something. And we're like, yes, finally, that's what I want. That's it. That's what most men are after. And so um, that's a topic for a whole other day. I
And you
very
won't
much
be punished for taking the action.
Yeah, you won't be
That
punished for
were amazing.
doing. Yeah, and that's I think that's what you see in especially Red Dead. What they fight, what they're fighting against. Why the Pinkertons feel so viscerally, even though they're not saying anything too unreasonable, at least early on. Hey, you guys have committed crimes. Please turn yourselves in, because we are in an orderly society now. And you're like, there's something about you that's like, but look at how nice they are to each other. Look at the loyalty that they've shown to each other. Look at how they're making it on their own. They don't need the society that you have, but they kind of do because they have to rob from that society. And it's
Yeah.
its own thing, but it still does speak to that that deeper
Yes.
bit of the masculine urge to go out with your buddies and accomplish a goal. That's
Yep.
it. That's really what it is. And so,
That is
um,
our appeal for our weekly Helldivers 2 sessions.
um,
Even
I
if it's
thought
limited.
that was good. Oh no, I don't know. Illuminate might be where I draw the line. That's that's I think we're gonna have to go back to a knitting circle if we're just gonna be playing against Illuminate. Oh, gross. And so. But yeah, I think that's kind of when you see that idea of literature as a feminized space, is that theme of of men accomplishing something, or men overcoming something together. That is, I think, one the soul of something that a lot of other media captures. And granted, some other media can just feel or be experienced better, especially something like Helldivers is a co-op game, so you're playing with your friends, and you
Hmm.
are, it is visual, which resonates with men, and you are shooting things that you've been told are bad. That's that's it. Bada bing.
Yeah.
That's the secret formula. But when it comes
And
to
we should add here, we have confirmation that they are bad, and it is a battle of survival in those situations.
yeah, Super Earth High Command told me so, and they've never lied to me ever. So
Well, and I was thinking about this, like to get into like the whole uh on the topic of, the satirical authoritarian regime that is Super Earth in Helldivers. And it's just like, is Super Earth responsible for much of the conflict that you're dealing with in the modern day, in the modern like game setting? Yes. Like
maybe.
they're the reason they're the reason the automatons are like causing problems. Like because of how they treated the citizens of Cyberstan. Uh, they are the reason why the Terminid mutations are out of control, and they're hopping from planet, and they're taking them from planet to planet and
Hmm.
allowing them to breed so that they can harvest more oil for the ships. Let's
Hmm.
not get into too much in the weeds about that one.
Yeah.
And the Illuminate, I don't even remember how the Illuminate and Super Earth started throwing hands in the first game.
If I
Um,
remember correctly, it was they did a "We come in peace," and Super said "No, you don't," and proceeded to shoot guns at them, and then they got them to retreat, and they said okay, and then we got Helldivers 2 Illuminate that said "I love genocide," and then they did,
yeah,
and
yeah,
so
and there's a little bit of that, like, is there a there's a bit of a karma, you're getting what you deserve, you're reaping what you sow, element to it. Yes. There's also the reality of like it's a battle for survival at this point. And it's very clearly like, it's kill or be killed. Like what species is just going to let themselves, like, even prey animals will
fight back.
run fight. Well, they might not fight. Not some of them have defense
Hmm.
mechanisms, but like they have a. But it's always about escape. It's not about being able to kill the predator necessarily. They're trying to get away. So like everything that lives is going to keep trying to live. And like if it's a battle for survival, if it's death or extinction, or fighting back, like, you know nature nature shows that everything fights, tries to do something. And it's like you know it's supposed to be fun as
Yeah,
well.
those are some
Anyway.
very interesting takes about the enemies of Super Earth. Face the wall.
No,
And
no, 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 wait.
but yeah, so that to that idea, with so the feeling like literature has become too feminine, has become something that just isn't for you, is for men, and like I said, with the a lot of editors being female, and possibly suggesting cuts or insisting on cuts to themes that would otherwise resonate with men, and especially with not very many male authors. If I did check the percentage of best-selling authors, at least from what I'm seeing, is 2020 was a standout year where it was 67% female best-selling authors,
Wow.
but I don't see anything right now um, for male authors at all. But still, the only ones I can think of, you've got George R. R. Martin and Brandon Sanderson. Those are the only two names that stand out to me for male authors. And there's a bit of a dilemma as well, because there's an incentive for so there is a incentive for some men to kind of fall in lockstep with what is popular, um, what is popular, or at least what is going to get cleared. So they will just they'll just write something that goes with the status quo, when most of kind of one of the big things that draws men to stories is them being against or the status quo, or to about stories that are different from what you hear every day, or things that you are seeing, everywhere around you. And so when these when the space is, largely dominated by women, it's kind of a, men either are just like, oh, I'm just not going to bother with it because there's not enough men that want to read, and I'm not going to write. It's not going to be useful, and then it
No
just,
one's going to care.
yeah,
No
it's
one's going to value what I produce.
and then, I guess the other issue, at least from from things I've been seeing, is there's a lot of, obviously with the advent of AI, there's now a lot of, mass produced books that are
Hmm.
not written with, the same soul, spirit, mythos, and the things um, that men loved from the past. Authors like Tolkien and whatnot, who were creative. You will see, if you are reading a book that's written by AI, there's a good chance that you're going to see the same things. Obviously AI cannot create; it can only recycle and morph and transform things that are already existing. But it cannot create, it cannot think, it cannot explore into those new ideas and territories, or go through things, or come up with new interpretations that you may not have heard of yet. And so that is a that's another really uh, big issue, is that, I've been seeing a lot of these, like, AI, very clearly AI um, done books that are getting, mass recommended on, things like Instagram, and or just
Hmm.
scrolling on it, on a page or whatnot, because, I've been clocked by the algorithm to be an author, somebody who has an engagement with books, and so now they're like, assail him with everything.
Yeah.
And it is interesting that a lot of them are specifically circled around the genre of lit RPG, which I have no problem with that as a genre. I don't know if you've heard of lit RPG.
I'm sure I'll probably know what it is when you describe it.
So lit RPG as a genre is essentially, a lot of authors, at least this is how I'm assuming it happened, is a lot of authors saw Sword Art Online happen, and they said, that's neat, let's write
Ah.
that. And so it's a lot of, literature that is that does not hide the stats, that does not hide the clearly fictional world setting. It's essentially you could call it isekai literature, I guess.
Hmm.
Um, and so we know what isekai did to anime, and now it's come for the books. And so,
I mean,
um,
they were doing that with light novels in Japan
yeah,
before the West was just like, hey, we can we can mine this for money.
yeah, we could probably harvest this for its soul. Um,
Hmm.
and so, yeah, that is very, at least I see a lot of recommendations. I do not know exactly how popular they are. I did do some, you know cursory looking around, not like a deep dive into anything, but did see a few posts that were talking about the rise of, lit RPG as a genre, and that it could be the thing that brings men back. But I don't see men talking about lit RPG as a genre, and I guess that could kind of lean into a, why do men not talk about the things that they've read if they are reading?
Hmm.
I guess, it is probably a lot less likely that you'll see a male, or at least a all male book club. Um, I'm not sure why that would. I'm not 100% sure. I guess men.
They're called Bible study groups.
Well, that's called a Bible study. Yeah, you're right. Oh no, somebody mentioned Nephilim. Here we go again.
Oh gosh, yeah, let's get in the weeds about that.
And so, but yeah, there's not really spaces for men to, gather around, hang out, and discuss what they've been, reading, and gain other insights and things from, other men. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it's a I don't even think that it is against a basic or a standard masculine instinct. I still think that would, in my mind, fall under the category of men working together towards a goal. Um,
Mhm.
that is still men learning from each other and discussing what they gleaned from a text with each other. So
Yeah.
I don't really think that is something that is. I think that there should definitely be a lot more books. Gosh dang it! Now you got me thinking Bible study, book clubs that are comprised predominantly of men.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, so I guess that's one that while there's a lot of data, there's a lot of statistics, and a lot of things that have certainly not helped the perception of literature as this feminized space. Between all of the stats we talked about, the trend. I'm sure you've heard the term performative male,
Hmm.
where they're like, oh, men have started reading just so they can impress girls. So if you see a man reading, he's probably just doing it performatively. So then that just makes men double down, be like, well, I'm definitely not going to read because if I am reading, you're going to be like, oh my God, you're being a
Yeah.
performative male.
Ugh.
And so,
Can't do
yeah,
nothing right.
exactly. If you're not reading, you uneducated, uncultured buffoon. Okay,
Yep.
I'll read. You
Increase,
perform.
read and increase your vocabulary. Ah, look, he's just doing it because he wants to impress the girls. It's just like,
Look at him go.
yeah, just
What do you want me to do? Just tell me what to do at this point, okay?
disappear.
um, so kind of to that idea, or I guess not at all to that idea, but um, two things that can kind of go into the same. What is missing in stories? I guess we did touch on that of the idea of competent men working towards something, or seeing men feel like they are valued, wanted, and needed. Everybody knows that every man, all we ever want is for somebody to say, hey, I'm proud of you, and then we'll carry that for the next 20 years.
Hmm. Oh my gosh,
Oh.
yeah. The Sunday, man, we were so busy. And I was like, normally we get, downtime in the afternoon while the kiddo is napping, and we had a little bit. And then I was like, my wife what goes off and has a couple errands to do, and I got up on my feet and I just moved through the day and just like did a lot of the things around the house that they just needed doing. And I was like basically on my feet for the next like I would say like 6 hours. And it was just
Hmm.
like constantly moving, doing stuff and like and obviously doing quality time with my daughter once she was up and about. But uh got to the end of the day and just like kind of flopped into bed and she looks at me and she's like, hey, you did a lot of things today. Thank you for that. And I was like, you're welcome. Thank you for saying thank you.
All right, I'll be good for the next 10 years. I'll function forever.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, but kind of to that, well, not exactly to that effect, but still, talking about all of these things. But one of the things that I'm sure a lot of people think and wonder is, why does it even matter? Why is there? What is the point of there being good stories in written literary form, if we have to get
Mhm.
real semantic about it, for men to engage with? Like, what changes? What happens if we actually do somehow stoke the flames of getting men to dig their nose back into a book, and for reasons of just they would like to read a story? Why does it matter that the stories that are coming out are good stories, are stories with soul, stories that reach the people's hearts, and they get people to think and ask
Yeah.
questions and examine themselves? That's a big thing about um, meaningfully engaging with a story. If a story can make you reflect on yourself,
Mhm.
that is where it is. That's when you know it's doing something good.
Yeah. Gosh, those both big questions and both like there's a lot of ways to approach it, I think. The Okay, so we've got what's missing for men in in our stories,
Hmm.
but also why does it matter? Um, I think as far as like I think, and it might be the just I was thinking about this and the observation I think I've made is it's been a cultural perspective issue, I think, for, as long as I've been like really into reading, which has been since probably I'd say middle school. So, you know, 20 plus years. Um, like men read, um, but a lot of the time that it's going to be because they have to. It's compelled reading. So it's not really like helping them figure out, like explore and broaden their horizons.
One
Unless someone like
step.
comes alongside them and notices what gets them excited and just like take a look at this. Like this might be something that resonates with you that you might find interesting. Um, Whether it's, it's actual fiction or if it's someone's autobiographical account and they're from a field that someone is interested in and they want to get a peek behind the curtain. Um, but I think, my experience, like I'm, huge nerd growing up. So I read a lot of fantasy stuff. Um, and you have the classic good versus evil. Like there's clearly defined heroes and villains, and that helped shape my on top of the household I grew up in and my own Christian faith. Um, but those stories um, had an impact on the value system that I have and um, the you know the moral view of good versus evil, and that there's like you have a society, or you have like a home and a family. You have your community that is your responsibility um, to protect, and uh, whatever means that you have to keep the threat away is the thing that you make use of. Um, but like I think the perspective is that just like there wasn't uh there wasn't necessarily that there's like there's not a place for me to engage with there, but that there's nothing that it can provide for me. And I think about this, I'm like, some of the most like influential, respected male leaders in history, be they the leaders of a nation, the leaders of armies, um, the writers and poets, the philosophers, the scholars that uh, have had some of the most profound impact on our civilization. Um, they weren't just like men of physical action that were willing to do violence if necessary. They were also very intelligent people. Um, they read a lot and they studied their history and they studied the perspectives of their people. Like some of the best generals actually read like and study up on the generals of the other country that they're likely to get into conflict with. Um, at least they used to. I don't know if that's like a standard now, or how much of a standard it is now. Like you'd want your officers in the military to, be highly educated, well read, well studied on everything else going on around the world. But some of the most to have the perspective of like, Is it about what you read? Yes, but like it doesn't have to, reading isn't just the fantasy stuff. Reading isn't just, uh, dragons and knights and castles and princesses. It's the Jack Reacher novels. It's,
It's Blood Meridian.
Red October is an awesome Cold War movie, and it's based on a book, The Hunt for Red October. Um, it's reading um, stuff that helps you develop as a person and become aware of your own flaws. Like I have a couple shelves of fantasy novels on in my office. I have, two or three other shelves that are, uh, you know, uh, examinations of uh, my Christian faith and becoming aware of my own flaws in that and leaning into the ethics of my faith to gain better mastery over myself and to be a more effective man.
Mhm.
It's but also like all these fancy words I use.
Mhm.
Like my wife is just like, you use words that I never like would think to use. And like other people like my Dungeons and Dragons campaign, like I used the word caustic in the title of a monster everybody was using because I was like, it has
Cool.
acid breath. What's a synonym for acid? How about caustic? And someone was just like, "Oh, that's a good word." And I'm like,
I
I
use that all
just
the
looked it up.
time
I
for
I
my
just looked it
poison
up.
builds. For any
I
game that I
did.
play a poison build, I know the word caustic for a long time. I love poison.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
It's just like
corrosive. Yeah.
you sound more intelligent, and the more intelligent you sound, like the more respect that you have walking into a space, and it increases your own confidence because like you know what you've read, and if you're diversifying what you're reading, like you understand the other perspectives, and there is a self-assurance, uh confidence, and I'd say a dignity in that you build for yourself the more you read and the more that you, keeping with the military analogy there, the more ribbons you put on your uniform, uh you're consuming the knowledge and you know metabolizing that and you know obviously like what you don't want to keep around, don't worry about it.
Mhm.
um but the stuff that you see the virtue in it, that you see that will benefit you, like you keep that and you can add that to yourself,
Mhm. Yeah.
and it's useful for the future. It's a window into other worlds, it's a window into the past, it's a window into the minds of other people. um
That's the one I was looking for.
yeah.
Window into the mind of other people. I think that to that point, it's that reading is the best way to use the E word that everybody is terrified of nowadays, and that is empathy. Because we live in this society where the term, the idea of empathy has been weaponized and misused and thrown around in positive ways, negative ways. We have the whole idea of toxic empathy now, where people think that empathy is just being really, really nice to every single person in every single scenario you see, and going, "Oh my goodness, we should all just be friends all the time," and not understanding that empathy is the ability to understand how somebody might feel or think, and to, like you said, window into their mind. Um, and that, I think, is one of the biggest things that, it's kind of a general, obviously it very much applies for men, but it is a very general thing, and about the idea of reading being reading being an effective medium, because one of the things that reading does better than any of these passively ingested forms of of media is that it allows for internality, where you can see how the character might be thinking in that moment. You will get that character's thoughts, you will get that character's perspective that, in like a game or a film or whatnot, that character will have to say out loud, dang, that I really hated that. But obviously that can create some weirdness in script and how pacing goes, and you'll have times where the character will say something that is their internal thoughts and feelings that just does not feel like human speech, and it's like it's the best way they can get that internality. But in a book, if you if you have the line of your character saying, yeah, that's fine, and then the next line, it was not fine, that does something, and you're like, okay, that is the person putting on a mask, that is them having a farce. You can't
Mhm.
really convey that in a game or in a movie. Like, you can get some facial things of like, yeah, that's fine, but then you have to change the tone of how it's delivered. And but if you have them say in a perky voice, oh yeah, though I'm super cool with that, and then they weren't cool with that, like, that does do something, and you have to be able to actually hold that and be able to understand, oh, that person is not actually thrilled about what's going on, and you can understand that better.
Yeah.
uh,
Insert any uh book to movie adaptation where that is like the book is heavily like you are seeing these events from the perspective of the main character. The number of times like, Harry Potter, I have these just off the top of my head, like Harry Potter, Hunger Games, like there's a lot like you're not seeing it from first person view, but so much of the narrative is being told to you through the eyes of Harry, of Katniss.
mhm,
And when you go and you adapt it to the big screen, at least at least I don't think it was Hunger Games first person for Katniss. Anyway, you go and see it in the movie theater, and you realize that like, oh man, but like, what about like this XYZ narrative point that was significant in the book? And it's just like, well, that requires us having her narrating or describe, like you have all these things being described for you in word form on a page. And that's not something that it's hard to translate that to the big screen without just, having their voiceover constantly in your ear.
mhm.
So
Yeah, and that, to that same idea of, empathy and understanding how somebody else is thinking, that also does translate to a degree to the author as well, because um, one of the things I guess about movies and whatnot is that a lot of the time they're big, oftentimes corporate board approved, um, because of just how much goes into them. And also, you have every actor's interpretation of a character and this and that. But in
mhm.
a book, you are getting the closest distillation of, this is what author wants to say about X person in this story. These were all the feelings, these were all the things, and it helps you to kind of understand the author as well, for better or for worse. Like, people always talk about George R. R. Martin. They're like, hey, yo, dude, your fetishes are everywhere. You forgot to scrape those off before you know,
Yeah.
that's okay, I guess. And so
Oh no,
we're
I wanted them in there.
I mean, I guess to a degree, you've got Miyazaki and, everybody having their feet out. But but still, there's
From
a
Software Miyazaki, not
yeah,
Studio Ghibli Miyazaki,
yes, to be
obviously.
clear. But there is a degree of improving on real empathy, not the term that gets thrown around social media today of, oh my goodness, it's just so empathetic. It's no, that is just seeing a situation, saying, oh, I feel sorry for whoever is the person who, is perceived to be the victim, quote unquote, in this situation, instead of thinking, what would another person think about that isn't from my culture, that isn't from what I know, that is different than me. And it forces you to proactively think about somebody else's worldview perspective. And even if it's not a person, I was a huge fan of the Redwall series growing up. It's a miracle that I'm not.
Oh, same.
Yeah, it's a miracle that I'm not a furry. And so, but I love the Redwall series, and those were
Mhm.
about rodents. They were about ferrets and mice and rats. But it
Did you ever
still,
see the cartoon?
I never did.
Oh, there was like it was I've never been able to find it, but I know it exists because I like caught glimpses of I think it was actually it was about the not the Martin the Warrior. It was
Hmm.
the movie it was like a animated story of Martin the Warrior of like the events that led up to like establishing
Hmm.
Redwall Abbey. Um, but it's like it was. I think it might have been on PBS like once, and then I was
Yeah.
like, I've never found it again.
I could
But anyway,
probably hunt
continue.
that down. Yeah, so those were really good. Those books were really good because I always liked how they would split perspectives, where you would usually have the adventuring group and then the at home group, where they would have kind of something going on there. But a lot of times they would go and cover the perspectives of the enemy, whoever it was, whatever weasel or ferret or stoat or whatever. It's amazing how
Or a
much more.
Wolverine in one of them.
Yeah, it's amazing how much you'll know about just random wildlife by reading those books. And
Hmm
you're like, oh, I know what a stoat is. um,
Oh,
and
on that topic,
mm,
um, I it's like the John Mulaney bit about like, man, I thought quicksand was going to be a much bigger issue in my adult life.
oh gosh,
Uh,
yeah.
because of just like watching all like the kids shows growing up. It's like reading Redwall books. I thought like river pike were going to be a much bigger
Mm,
issue
yeah.
growing up than they ever were. When I found out like, oh no, it's like Southwest doesn't have really a lot of like river fish that are terrible like that. Also, a pike's probably like huge to a mouse, and that's probably
Hmm.
another factor.
Yeah,
Anyway,
there's so many things. Like that was one thing I very, very much remember. I don't remember which novel. I think it might have been Salamandastrin, but I could be wrong.
hell yeah,
But gosh, oh my goodness,
for
I'm
the
not.
fighter.
We're not going to get the Eulalia going on here, okay? We're not going to be getting like no battle cries. But where there was this adder, I think it was like the had burrowed beneath the abbey, and kind of having to get into the perspective of so an adder is a snake. It's a viper. Like okay, so we would step on it. What is that to a mouse though? That is like the apex predator. That is the hugest thing,
Hmm
and that is another thing that books do so well is that they can force you into a perspective. Like there are some games that have kind of captured, what it would be like to be bigger, smaller, just to be different, or how it would handle to be, different in some way. But books are, if been a wondrous medium at conveying, the internality of something that is different than you, and that is, I think, one of the biggest, important things for people to read. Like you had said, yes, there is the masculine aspect of understanding others, especially an enemy, will help you. That was one of the things I actually really liked from. I think it was either in Clone Wars or Rebels. It was one of those two shows, but where Grand Admiral Thrawn was shown that he studies the cultures of every force he's fighting against, for the sole reason of, oh well, I can understand what do they hold sacred, what do they, what will they likely do if I were to attack X planet or X, temple. This, how much do they revere certain things, so I can gain upper hands in battles by knowing their culture. And then his office was full of relics of, different societies that he could potentially learn from. And it was really interesting. I was like, oh yeah, that's a take that we probably don't see enough. I mean, most generals are just shown as like, I'm sitting at the table looking over a map of battles, or I am actively on the battlefield yelling at people. We don't see them
hmm
sitting there reading a book, in a language that they don't fully understand to, try and understand it and get some insight into their foe. Like that's something. But yeah,
Yeah.
reading definitely is one of the best ways to inspire real empathy, not performative empathy, not you know surface level empathy. It inspires understanding, and it also gives you a degree of discernment,
Hmm.
to understand when somebody is probably lying to you, or when somebody does not actually have the best of intentions. It's also, I think, why some things don't translate as well to screen, where it's like, you see whatever villain is, and then everybody just kind of goes along with them. You're like, the book made it pretty clear that nobody trusted them. Why is everybody just kind of, I guess we have to. The plot says so. Like,
Right.
and so books are a lot better at showing how a villain might disguise their intentions by, oh, the villain was very well dressed, he was very well spoken, he knew all the right things, but he also said a few things that were a little off, or there
Yeah.
was something about him, the way he always hid one of his arms, that you could never really
Yeah.
know what he
His
was.
smile never seemed to touch his
Is
eyes.
Yeah, yeah,
This is one I see a lot.
that's a good one. I literally heard that, like yesterday, and when I was listening, that's crazy. Um, and so yeah, that's I guess that gets to the point of why does it matter that stories are told right, and because it helps anybody, but especially for men, it helps you to develop things that are not trained, brain muscles that have atrophied, is my favorite way to
Mhm.
put it. So the last points to really make here, is how do is we're talking all this about we got to read, we got to read, we got to read. There has to be stuff for men to read.
Right.
How do we
Well,
get more
in
men
one,
to
sorry,
write?
one moment there, actually. There was one
Oh,
other thought I had to the effect of like, uh, the why does it matter that we see stories get done right?
yes.
Um, that I had been thinking about this as well, and it was in line with our, oh, sorry, excuse me, with, you know, men being visual learners, much of the time. And that not just in like, uh, in books, but in media as well. Because obviously, like every, YouTuber talking head of a certain political bent is going to have an opinion on what's going on in the box office.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the at the core of the stories is like they're where there is that ethics code of ethics that is like, okay, so these are the things that are going on in the story, but why are these things going on in the story? Why are the characters doing those things? Um, there's the internalized uh, code of ethics that you get there, and um, that can have a profound impact. And the note that I made for myself as I was ruminating on this over the week was, um, reading or seeing a value system acted out or upon has more impact than simply being instructed about how important that value system is.
Hmm.
Um, and I think and I thought when I finally arrived at it, I'm like, that's it. Like that's my what the moments when I feel the most frustrated with uh certain narratives that I'm seeing across uh entertainment or uh books that running with certain themes or depictions of types of characters or the different genders, um, is that it's not just entertainment. It's not just a story. Um, because those things do have like even if like the studio head is like just caring about, the money that they'll make at the box office for a movie or the publishers cares about how many book sales they're going to get. Um, the person that wrote it more often than not wrote it with a certain agenda or a desire like they wanted it, there was a certain like value system or lesson that is at the heart of what they are putting in front of their audience. Um, and that's why it's, there's this reality um, of parents especially needing to be very discerning in what kinds of content they're putting in front of their kids, because especially in those early years. And I think there's studies out there of like 8 to 12 being like a super important period of time,
Mhm.
um, where your kids that's where you can really establish like the folklore heroes, we'll say, uh, for your children. Um, but the reason why, like, they, you know, it's we want to protect kids from like bad stories, and we want to make sure that they're getting the good stories. Is like kids don't have all the history that like you and I and others uh, have experienced, going into consuming that story.
Mhm.
And so you what they see on that screen is a lesson that they have taken in uh world. Um Even if it's a fantasy setting.
Mhm.
Um and if it is something that is like especially because of this is the world we're living in right now where the visuals of that product have become uh very um they're supposed to keep you engrossed and engaged, and just you can't take your attention off of it. Like all the more reason, all the more so that lesson is going to be absorbed and internalized.
Mhm.
Um, and I think to myself, you know, fresh out of college, um, I end up, because I'm going into criminal justice, I want to do social services. Down the line, I get a job at a juvenile corrections facility. Terrible idea,
I was gonna say
right out
that
of the gate.
sounds like a
Just
blast, but all right.
It was, yeah, it was a complete naivety that led me there, um, and I was ill-equipped, both, you know, in life experience up to that point, and also by the training that I received there. They were in a state of like we just need bodies on the yard, um, but I was like looking at a lot of these young men in this juvenile corrections facility, and like you guys have the brains for that to do different things. They are smart. They see they're capable of seeing patterns. They're capable of like of figuring out systems and manipulating things.
Mhm.
We part of our training was like seeing the quote unquote museum of tools over the years that uh, these teenage boys had pieced together, whether it be like ways to tattoo themselves or,
Huh.
unfortunately, weapons,
Mhm.
and the like. It's like you guys can problem solve. You can do these things, um, but you choose to put your energy and then turn that mind to these behavior patterns that are destructive to you and people around you.
Mhm.
Um, and I kind of reached a point where I was like, it's the value system that and it's such a simple thing, but for I just didn't get there at the time until a while after I had left that
Mhm.
place. That it's the value system that they had put in front of them.
Mhm.
And so there is a bit of that, like there's the nature, there's the nurture, and then there's the village that you grew up in. kind of thing. Like
Hmm.
there is a way to there is value in this other system, this other code of ethics, but the stories that you had acted out in front of you were the ones uh, that you internalized,
Hmm.
that you said that this is the way to live. Um, and I think and that's like a very like visceral example of
Oh yeah.
this concept. Um, but I think and it's the same kind of like learning pattern for any other walk of life, any other area that you find yourself in, is that are the things that you are putting into your mind, or that you are exposing yourself to, are they lessons? Are they stories that are being a net benefit to you? Or are they something that's like, warping your perception of the world around you, or encouraging you into things that are not helpful for you, not helpful for your loved ones? Uh, so I think that's another reason why, is just, why does it matter that the stories get done right? It's like, because the lesson from the story as far can have far-reaching consequences. Um, and there's a standard there that should be looked out for, and it takes some discernment to identify that.
Hmm. Yeah, I do think that is a huge thing there. To just what do stories impart? What does media impart as a as a lesson? And yes, for children and for youth especially, and even for men, our brains develop until we're 26, 27, 28, kind of in that ballpark. um, there is still parts of the brain that, especially if we're men that are only a few years younger than us, that are their brains are still taking things in and learning from stuff. And even if you are seeing or engaging with something passively, or even, I guess, ironically, or engaging with something in a way that you're just like, oh well, I don't, it's not going to affect me. Uh, we've heard that one from people a lot. Yeah, it no one thing usually does, but mixed in with, like you said, your in your nature, your environment. There are things. There's levels to things. Uh, where if you are coming at something where you are mentally, spiritually, emotionally, whatever, unprepared, or you don't have all of the right tools, um, you can take the wrong lessons away. Like, we were talking about GTA and Red Dead Redemption. You could take the lesson away of, I should go be a criminal because being a criminal gives you freedom and you'll make good friends. That is a lesson that could certainly be interpreted from those, even though there was a lot better things to learn from those stories.
Yeah.
That can happen with it with a lot
And
of
it is
stories.
very not much so not indicative of a real life experience you'll end up having.
Exactly, but that's kind of that is something that somebody could glean without the proper safeguards and whatnot. Yeah, no, I do like your that as an example. And yeah, people's value systems, and once again getting to the idea of empathy, is there are other people out there with different values than you and different value systems than you. There was one I learned about recently. Oh, I need to look it up. It's an Indian from India. It's a word that means a kind of gumption, but a sort of the ability to play the system is considered a virtue. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And so, in to be. able to pull one over on the man, TM, whatever you identify to be the man, is virtuous. And, for any, for a lot of other civilizations, we say no, that is what we would consider a lie. Like, no, it's just
Hmm.
getting one over. It's just using a loophole that was left there. You know,
My line of work, we call that fraud.
yeah. And hilariously, there's a relevant to gaming. When it's happened a few times in Race to World First and World of Warcraft raids. I think it was the really big one with the first Lich King kill. But the guild that downed the Lich King, they did something. It was a racial ability for goblins that they were able to use, or maybe that might have been Deathwing. I'm not sure, but there was a racial ability that they utilized, and Blizzard said, no, 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 you can't do. Oh no, it wasn't the racial. It was an item that was able to do a bunch of damage, and they were like, yeah, we got these items. It was an item we thought it was perfectly valid to use. They said, no, yeah, that's an exploit. They said, no, it's a creative use of game mechanics. And I use that phrase for way too many things in my life. I'm like, I'm not exploiting it. That's a creative use of game mechanics. And so, yeah, that is a something that is worth taking away. Is you reading does help with establishing value systems, and also helps you to understand other people's value systems, getting to that idea of empathy. Um, and this is the last point that I wanted to make about this. And it kind of ties into this because of something that somebody had told me. But it's about getting men to write, because yes, we could talk all day long about getting men to read, but also writing is a huge part. There's not a lot of male authors, or at least not nearly as many as there are female authors.
Mhm.
And really, the whole chain of publishing is very female dominated, and so that includes writers, editors, whatnot. Um, but this does tie it back into what we were saying about value systems, because I was talking to a an author when I had started writing books, and he said, one thing about writing is the realization that your creative energy is at your fingertips, and what is inside can inevitably come out, intentionally or otherwise. And he said he'd seen a lot of friends who had, gotten into writing and justified a lot of very horrific things in their own minds, because they were like, oh, well, see, I wrote it like this, and it helped me to understand it better like this. And it's like, okay, so I'm pretty sure that's a crime, whatever you just wrote. Whoa,
Yeah.
dude, that's a crime. And so, um, so while that ties into writing, is how do men get into writing and to permeate this space that is not openly hostile, but is definitely not as receptive to male presences within it. How should men be? How could we encourage men to put pen to paper, put finger to keyboard, and say, I have a story that needs to be told that I think other men or other people, doesn't even necessarily need to be men, but other people could benefit from?
Mm. Well,
That's the neat part. You don't.
yes. Well, as far as like the whole, I will not speak beyond what I can uh, comfortably say I know anything about, which is to say the messy world of publishing. Uh,
Delicious.
because I have, yeah, can't say I've ever like read up on the uh, now that we're talking about it. I've never really done much research on editing and publishing.
He's pretty
Um,
gnarly out there.
yeah, I believe it.
Mm.
Just based on the sole fact of the volume of things there are to read out there, and then the advent of generative AI just, you know, creating stuff out of scraping the internet
Mm.
is, yeah. Um, I would say getting into writing, um, the same go about it this you'd want to go about the same way you would when you're trying to hone any other skill, and that's learning from those that are more experienced or skilled, um, practicing, uh, working through failure, taking it as a lesson.
Mm.
Something I very much struggle with is, accepting that the failure is not necessarily a bad thing, but can be a way to improve and move forward. Um,
Mm.
the and I think life experience also is
Mm.
just something missing
Yeah. Touching
from
grass is actually really
from
important.
go figure that yeah, touching grass is a skill issue to or a skill barrier to writing. But like it's true though, or and not necessarily like there's a little bit of life experience there, but also it's, being someone with a I'm going to use a word and it's not what's going to come be I'm not going to mean exactly what a lot of people think I mean.
Oh,
A
now I got it.
diversified mind.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Now that makes sense.
uh, it's the point of like you've seen and read and experienced uh, a lot of different stories, and like you understand what you like and what you don't like. Um, you understand like when you're getting into math, I'm sure you've experienced this too. When you're getting into like world building a setting
Oh,
for a
yeah.
book, the amount of like rabbit hole type research you end up doing in different cultures, like in real life, not even just, in very expanded universes in fiction, but also just in real life. You're just like you're drawing inspiration from somewhere. And so it's like, hey, that looks cool, but I want to make sure if you're a good faith writer that actually cares about, you know, the immersion and the sincerity of your work, uh, you're going to want to make sure that you're using that in a way that makes sense. That if the point is to this looks cool, I want this to evoke a kind of like empathetic or like emotional connection with the reader.
Mhm.
Um, I need to also make sure that I'm using that thing correctly in the setting in a way that makes sense. Uh, but if you're just, someone that's like, I have this story I want to tell, but you've expanded your horizons very little, and you've kept yourself in very much like a single like hallway of content.
Mhm.
um, you're not going to be able to make something that's like really worthwhile because and not something you might not be proud of because you didn't really have a deep well of information and experience to draw from. Um, and I and I will just point out like the number of books that came out in the mid 1900s that have just stood the test of time. Like you have Lewis and C.S. Lewis, J.R.R. Tolkien, of their group of other writers, the Inklings, um, and most recently Frank Herbert, writer of Dune. It's got its third movie coming out the Dune Part Three, and it's like the third go around of adapting Dune. Um, but it's like they made a trilogy after the first book, and there's expanding upon where the book originally ends. Um, and then uh, just the amount of like when you look at the sci-fi books that have come out of like the mid 1900s, post World War
Gosh.
II era, it is insane. Like I'm genuinely blown away by how prophetic some of these men were.
Mm-hmm.
Which, oh, by the way, men, a lot of the greatest writers from this period of history are all men. They are all men that experienced a lot of life.
Mm-hmm.
They they
War.
were it's just like you look at them and I'm like, okay, so you were either a World War One or a World War Two veteran.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and you've been through some stuff and then had a very significant impact on how you see the world and human nature. And you took to writing out those concepts and and it's, can be a very much a night and day difference between the World War One veteran authors and the World War Two veteran authors. Um, with World War Two, you get very like I would say like I'd say a bit more cynical,
Mm-hmm.
um, and very Frank Herbert, World War Two veteran, uh, wrote the you know wrote Dune and many of the sequels. Um, there's another author that I thought of earlier today, named Kurt Vonnegut. He was a prisoner of war captured during the Battle of the Bulge, um, and like survived a firebombing by hiding in a slaughterhouse meat locker.
Word.
And yeah, it was an Allied bombing of the city,
Hmm.
and he survived it by hiding out in this meat locker. Um, but he had a very like obviously a lot of his work was dark humor, satirical, anti-war. Um, then he also has this one book that, or not a book, a short story that I read in school years and years ago now, called Harrison Bergeron, Bergeron. It was published in 1961, but it's a
Mm-hmm.
dystopian short story set in the year 2081, and it's terrible.
Hmm.
Government is forcing equality of outcome for everyone.
Oh
Um,
no.
yes.
Gosh, couldn't
Um,
imagine that.
and
Jeez.
and I pre-read I pre-read, yes, let's not get too far down that.
Mm-mm.
But the I pre-read this speaking of AI, uh, you know uh, wrapped it up here. The government forces citizens to wear physical weights and mental handicap masks to ensure absolute equality.
Hmm.
Intelligent people receive loud, debilitating noises in their headsets to shatter any deep, or in this world, dangerous thoughts. Um, and so it's the scene is this man, George Bergeron, is watching ballerinas on television who are apparently weighted down with sandbags and masks to hide their beauty. His mind, uh, in this setting here, his mind was far superior to the mandated average. So every 20 seconds, a government transmitter sent a deafening sound like a car crash or a gun firing directly into his earpiece, shattering his focus on the injustice. Um, his wife Hazel, who possessed a perfectly average mind with no handicaps, could only think in short bursts. Um,
Hmm.
you know, uh, while they're watching the ballerinas, um, the their son Harrison, who's the short story is named after, who's a genius, and uh, the overview here says a giant. I remember it being just simply he was very clearly athletically
Mm-hmm.
gifted, like way above average, but he escapes jail, so he's already been jailed.
Huh.
Um, Breaks into the TV studio, sheds the massive, humiliating handicaps to show the world true potential. Dances with one of the girls before this is the title, handicapper general kills them both. After which the television cuts out. George and Hazel forget the entire tragedy within seconds due to the once again booming disruptive noises.
Oh my
And
word.
it's like, we're not that dystopian, but think about how easy it is to lose your train of thought with your phone.
Hmm.
Like, you pull out your phone to do one thing and you autopilot onto social media, and now you don't even remember what you were doing.
Hmm.
It's like these guys, like, were able to, were because of what they were reading, how aware they were of human nature, um, and what they experienced in their lives. They were able to pull from this wealth of experience and knowledge, and were able to see the trends in their culture and in the world, and kind of follow it to a logical conclusion of sorts. Some of them are like scarily close to the point. Some of them are far less so. And I would say that, as far as um, perspective as a result of lived experiences, obviously I like Lewis and Tolkien's better. They're a lot more hopeful,
Hmm.
and uh, whereas guys like Herbert and uh, Vonnegut, uh, point out like, hey, this is a huge problem, and look at all these terrible things that can happen.
Oh no.
Um,
Anyways,
and yeah, but they offer, they seem to offer little to no solution to that, whereas
problem
Lewis and Tolkien
identifiers.
say, hey, look at these, like, the world is dark. There are these terrible forces out there. There are these people that are not out for your good, do not care about your own, about, whether or not you live a life of dignity. Um, but like, there is hope. There is there is a way forward. We have an answer here. Um, I, you know, obviously think it's a pretty good one. Uh, so
Hmm.
I think that's about it. Is hey, ironically, read more,
Hmm.
live some more life, um, and that this is probably a little hypocritical coming from me, but take risk. Um,
Hmm.
not been too much of a risk taker, I think, looking back on life, aside from doing this,
Hmm.
is taking bearing our views on podcast form and putting it on the internet is a risk. But it could be viewed as a risk. There's some discomfort in that, but I think there's a good in it as well.
Hmm. Always good to stick your neck out into new venues and hope it doesn't get cut off.
Yeah, there it
um,
is.
I think that for some of the interesting things I've seen as far as writing, especially for men, um, one thing that I will point out, and this can apply to any man, is if any man is trying to fight against lust, writing is amazing. And hear me out on this. We're going to go down a little bit. It's only a little bit of a rabbit hole, okay? It's only a little bit of one. I promise it's not going to get that deep. It has to do with alchemy. Would you believe it?
I,
Um,
c- I I'm so surprised
Jared's
by
never
you.
talked about this. um, so the idea of the desire to create, part of what part of of what lust is partially just the physiological. I want to reproduce. I want to make something. Channeling that same energy into words on a page, while initially might be like this is the absolute opposite of however you usually deal with that, uh, is actually genuinely beneficial to the mental and physical state of that. Is it is a way to, it is an outlet, it is an output, it is a way to project of yourself onto a receptive canvas, I say with no layers of innuendo. Um, but it really is. And the best way to start writing is to start writing. I know it's crazy work. Um, but really, if you are ever at a point where you would be otherwise wasting time, as in the ways we had kind of discussed, waste some time writing, even if it doesn't go anywhere, even if it doesn't necessarily need to lead to something. It's practice. It is something that drills the skill of projecting your thoughts somewhere that matters. Say, don't delete it. Don't you can save everything you write. I guess here it doesn't matter if it's on a Google Doc or otherwise. Um, just write something down. Start writing a small book. Start writing a D&D campaign. Write a character backstory. Come up with a character. Make them interesting. Add things to them. Now, what situation are they in? It that is one of the things that I found is a huge benefit to writing, and one of the genuine reasons that I I think that men historically have written a lot is because of that desire to create. um, and so that is a huge benefit of writing that I see. And yes, Dylan of course had a great point. Live life, go outside, touch some grass, go to a park, go to on a hike, go see nature as it is. Um, the more you learn about the more you learn about just general topics and the real world, the reality of reality, not the facsimile of reality that is presented through multiple screens to us, constantly day in and day out. The more you
Mhm.
see of reality, the more the more it is you are able to create and to imagine. There is a weird sort of irony in it that the more reality, the best fiction that we can cite is often uh, is often fiction that is written with a premise in some reality that we can understand. The Lord of the Rings usually cited as the greatest we have ever seen in fantasy and could be the greatest fantasy we have ever seen. Still uses very earth, earthly, understandable human premises, but also premises of nature, as we know it,
Anthology for England.
and as we have also alluded to, um, because two of those authors you had mentioned, Lewis and Tolkien, their faith uh, gave them a degree of understanding a nature beyond this earth, that being God, that being Christ, that being what we're taught in Christian faith. And because they had that layer, there's a video out there I was watching through, that was called like the horrors of the Bible, and how essentially the Bible, especially for Christians, is just like it's a wellspring of, oh, here's just a free idea bucket of absolutely terrifying things. And because there, if it, on the premise that that Christian faith is true, to any degree it is true, we would then have something that, hey, here's a book that teaches us a lot about human and earth and the nature and that surrounds us, and the structure of the supernatural. And if that is all done and handled correctly, that will touch to somebody's deepest core and be like, okay, I instinctively get that. There's a lot of things about uh, what humans instinctively understand, and what things do we just get on a fundamental level. And that's like partially where my study into hermeticism and alchemy, but where we see why is duality so big in everything. We have night and day, up and down, left and right. Anything that is a duality creates a tension, um, or do you see things of um, polarity? It kind of plays to duality, but wherever there is something, there is usually an opposite of it. Life and death, light and dark. You get into just about every trope. Uh, Shadow the Hedgehog exists because Sonic does, and so thanks Carl Jung for creating Shadow the Hedgehog. I will not elaborate on that sentence. And so, oh, and
You're a
so
monster.
I really am. But the more you see these things that are part of human nature, and the nature of just reality as we understand it to some degree, um, the better and more compelling stories you'll be able to write. So I I meant what I said. Weaponize that lust to create something amazing, and experience life, and also, yes, read and engage and critically engage with other media. Even if you're not reading, we're not saying, oh, you should never play games and you should never watch anime, or watch a show or a
Mhm.
movie or anything. But I do champion the idea of critically engaging with whatever media you do take in. Try to read a level deeper into a character or a character's motivations. It might ruin the thing for you. You might look at it a little harder and go, why are they just not doing this? Wait, this makes no sense. This is dumb. What the hell? You might get to that point, but that's okay, because to critically engage with something and find out that it feels hollow or whatnot is still beneficial. You didn't waste your time engaging with it. You were able to identify what made it hollow, what made it not substantive or whatever. Um,
You're gonna
and
annoy people at the family gathering that
exactly.
enjoyed that thing when you talk about how you didn't like, whatever theme or character motivation there was. But
Exactly. You get to be that really obnoxious person, but it's a good kind of obnoxious. It's an obnoxious because it makes people think. That's actually a point in the video you were talking about. The second story, if anybody's looking for a wonderful channel about writing, in that video about the Catcher in the Rye, she talked about one of the things that Holden Caulfield hated was that people just don't listen and whatnot. And there was a girl he was trying to tell about how he just hates the fakeness of society and all this, and she just kept telling him to stop shouting. But he said he wasn't shouting, and we know from the text he doesn't abide lying. And so what that is supposed to translate to is, stop saying what you're saying. I don't want to hear it.
mm,
And that idea of shutting down the reading a level deeper. A lot of people don't want to see past that, past the veil. A lot of people don't want to engage and um, their food and chew it a little bit. That's a good way to put it. You don't want to ingest their media and chew on it and potentially spit it back out if it is actually repulsive, and they don't like it and they go, ew, what is this actually about? What is this actually trying to say? This is very weird. Um, so, yeah, take some time to chew your food a bit in a media consumption setting as well. Um, yeah.
not to like be arrogant or inflate your ego or to lord it over people that you have this like refined taste in media. But like you're doing it because you care about yourself. You care about your own sense of integrity and value system. Uh, and you care about the long-term effect of that quality of uh, entertainment, media, story, what have you,
Hmm.
and what it might effect it has on other people that, you know, it's not, it doesn't, just because the awareness is lacking doesn't mean that it's not still having an impact.
Hmm.
And it's not bad to care about that.
Yeah, guiding people to the second order effects of what a theme or a line of thinking can take them to is pretty unique. To think about something one level deeper, one layer beyond, um, just what looks cool, sounds cool, whatnot. That was something, as my listening to Fourth Wing, I was when they said somebody has the power to see the outcome of a battle. I'm like, wait, whoa, whoa, wait, 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 wait. You cannot just give that power to your world and just leave it at that. Then just go pick a fight all across the enemy lands and then just, hey, do we win this one? Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll take that battle. Do we win this next one? Nuh-uh. Okay, let's pull away. Let's try a different battle. Do we win this one? Mm-hmm. We take this battle. Just do that. Bada bing. You win.
Then that's when you're seeing the future. That gets into weird mechanics. At which
Exactly.
point you're just like, don't put that power in your world.
Exactly. And I'm just like,
That's such a messy ball of writing
I was
that you
gonna
just
say it's this
can't write your way out of.
same energy as including time traveling. You're like, okay, do you know what you're doing? In the words of Subnautica, are you sure whatever you're about to do is worth it?
Yeah. Are you sure it's a good idea to write Steve Rogers out of your movie franchise in this manner? Okay.
All right, that's what you want. um, so all of that to say, men are dropping off of literature, and it's not great. However, we're not going to be Debbie Downers about it. Um, we are trying to discuss it, encourage men. I am actively writing novels right now that are aimed and targeted at a young male demographic. I am trying to focus on themes of adventure, heroism, things that we don't, competence, imagine, things that you don't see as often nowadays in a lot of these stories, and really try and hopefully capture the imaginations of some young men and hopefully write a few characters that can act as good role models despite their flaws that they fight to overcome. um, and yeah, if you are a man of any age, young, older, whatever have you, put a comment down below if uh, what you read, if you read at all, what you'd like to be seen more in literature, or what's kept you feeling like you're pushed away from literature, just in general. Um, and yeah, if you're a man who's writing, I certainly don't mind you discussing whatever you're writing in the comments and whatnot. I'd like to see, what are men making? What can we all be doing to encourage a generation of men to open up, crack open books again, and to take in some stories in in more critical ways and in more proactive ways that can positively shape your mind and your attitude and hopefully entire facets of your life. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Dylan?
And you got a lot of it in there. I would say, ladies,
Mm.
encourage the men that you know to read, uh, and know the men in your life. Uh, and if he takes the shot, uh, support him, encourage him, um, let him know that you're proud of him.
Mm. Is it?
Because as we cover have said multiple times before, man, guys are motivated by positive female affirmation, not just the shoulder to shoulder charging into battle of other men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, uh, anybody listening or still here, thank you for listening. Please drop a like, a subscribe, give a comment. That's what we had said. And this has been the Acastic Record. That's a little play on the Akashic Record to anybody that's catching up with that. I've been Jared, here with,
And I'm Dylan.
and we hope to catch you on the next episode. That's what they're called.